Today, we are exposing 5 beer brands sitting in Australian fridges that are lying to you right now. Fake imports brewed in local factories. Healthy, low-carb beers that are chemically stripped, flavourless water. And one iconic bottle that science proves is damaged before you even open it. Stay with me. Stay. Because at the end, I will show you the real Australian breweries making honest beer that actually tastes like beer should. You have been told beer is simple. Water, malt, hops, yeast, the classic Aussie drink. But walk into any bottle shop today, and you are staring at a wall of lies. Private label ghost brands pretending to be real breweries. Licensed imports brewed in the same factories as the cheapest domestic lagers, and low-carb options that are nothing more than enzyme experiments designed to strip out every gram of flavour. Big corporations have bought up the brands you trusted and turned them into profit machines. They use clear bottles that let ultraviolet light destroy the beer inside. They replace expensive malt with cheap cane sugar. They dose the brew with industrial enzymes until there is nothing left but alcohol and bubbles. This is not about being a beer snob. This is about whether you are drinking real beer made by brewers or a mass-produced slurry designed by accountants. So which beers are scamming you right now? Let us start with the supermarket trick that fools thousands of Australians every single week. Number 1. Supermarket private label beer brands such as Tongs, Smithy's, Hammer and Tongs, and Steersman. Walk into a Coles or Woolworths-owned liquor store, places like Liquorland, BWS, First Choice, or Dan Murphy's, and you will see entire walls of cheap beer brands you have vaguely heard of. Tongs, Smithy's, Hammer and Tongs, Steersman, Lorry Boys, and more. They look like classic blue-collar Australian beers. The packaging is rugged and nostalgic. The price is rock bottom, often significantly cheaper than established independent breweries. But here is the catch. These breweries do not really exist as independent brewing companies. They are private label brands owned by the supermarket groups themselves. Woolworths, through its Endeavour Drinks Group arm and its Pinnacle Drinks division, and Coles, through its Coles liquor business, own these trademarks and contract out the actual brewing to large industrial brewing facilities. The goal is not to create distinctive, characterful beer. The goal is to undercut legitimate breweries by shaving every possible cent off production costs and capturing higher profit margins through vertical integration. Smithy's, for example, was created specifically for Liquorland and First Choice stores and is marketed as delivering clean, uncomplicated beer at a budget-friendly price. The range now includes premium lager, bitter, dry lager, mid-strength and draft, all brought together under a single Australian brand that exists only within the Coles retail ecosystem. So, what are you actually drinking when you buy one of these private label beers? In many cases, they are beers brewed with high ratios of adjuncts. Adjuncts are ingredients like cane sugar, glucose syrup, or corn syrup that are added to the brewing process to boost the alcohol content cheaply, without having to use as much expensive malted barley. The beers are designed to be inoffensive, chemically stable, and cheap to produce at scale. In the glass, drinkers often describe them as tasting metallic, thin and watery because of the lower malt content, or sweet in a sickly, artificial way that does not feel natural. The label might suggest traditional draft or classic bitter, evoking images of Australian brewing history. The reality is a corporate ghost brew designed primarily to take shelf space away from independent Australian brewers and to deliver higher margins to the supermarket chain that owns the brand. And if you think, well, at least I will grab a premium import like Asahi Super Dry, that is a proper Japanese beer, think again. Number 2 is the Japanese icon that is not as Japanese as you might believe anymore. Number 2, Asahi Super Dry, the Australian brewed version sold locally. For years, Asahi Super Dry was the gold standard of crisp, clean Japanese lager. It was brewed in Japan with strict quality control, imported in refrigerated containers, and had a distinct, sharp, dry finish that matched the premium label and the premium price. Then the production for the Australian market changed. Asahi Group Holdings acquired Carlton and United Breweries, known as Cub, in 2020, and now the Asahi Super Dry you buy at Dan Murphy's BWS or your local bottle shop is brewed right here in Australia at the same industrial brewing facilities that produce Victoria Bitter, Carlton Draft, and other mainstream domestic lagers. CUB, which is now proudly part of Asahi Beverages, operates breweries in Victoria, Queensland, New South Wales, South Australia, and Tasmania. The company openly lists Asahi Super Dry alongside its other major brands, including Great Northern, Pure Blonde, Carlton Dry, and premium beers such as Peroni, as well as leading craft brands that Asahi has acquired, like Four Pines, Pirate Life, Bolter, Mountain Goat, and Green Beacon. Beer enthusiasts and regular drinkers notice the difference almost immediately after the production shift. Online forums, beer review channels and social media have been filled with complaints about the Australian brewed version tasting syrupy, soapier, and lacking that signature crisp snap and clean finish of the Japanese original. Some drinkers have described it as having a weird feel in the mouth and leaving an aftertaste that was not present in the imported version. The alcohol content has also been adjusted slightly in some formats to align with local production standards, and the ingredient sourcing has shifted to Australian industrial supply chains rather than Japanese brewing operations. So why is this a problem? Because you are often still paying a premium import price at the checkout for a beer that is now mass-produced locally in the same facilities as budget mainstream lagers. You are paying for the brand prestige and the image of Japan, but you are drinking the reality of an Australian mega brewery producing beer at industrial scale. If you want the real thing, the genuine Japanese brewed Asahi Super Dry, you now have to actively hunt for it. Some specialty retailers still carry 500 milliliter cans that are imported directly from Japan, and you need to check the fine print on the label for the words product of Japan. Otherwise, you are just drinking marketing and nostalgia, not the authentic product. And if you think, I do not care about imports, I just want a healthy low-carb beer to keep my calories down, number 3 is where the chemistry set really comes out to play. Number 3. Industrial low-carb lagers, such as Pure Blonde and Hahn Super Dry. The low-carb beer trend is absolutely huge in Australia. Brands like Pure Blonde, which is owned by SUB, and Asahi, and Hahn Super Dry, which is owned by Lion, market themselves as the healthy, active choice for people who want to enjoy beer without the extra carbohydrates. The packaging is sleek, sporty, and clean. The messaging is all about ultra-low-carb, crisp refreshment, and a cleaner drinking experience. But how do you actually make a beer with almost no residual sugar left in it? You do not just brew it traditionally and hope for the best. You often use exogenous enzymes, and specifically an enzyme called amyloglucosidase, also known as glucoamylase or AMG. This enzyme is added to the mash conversion vessel or the fermenter to break down every single complex sugar, including dextrins that normal brewing yeast cannot ferment, into simple fermentable sugars that the yeast can then consume. The result is a beer that is fermented bone dry, with almost zero residual carbohydrates left behind. Amyloglucosidase is widely used in commercial brewing specifically for producing low-carb and super dry style beers, as well as in distilling to increase alcohol yield. It is legal, it is safe, and it is effective, but it also strips the beer of almost all malt body, complexity, and character. The result is a liquid that technically has alcohol and carbonation, but has zero of the rich mouthfeel, sweetness, or depth that you would expect from a traditional beer. To try and make up for the fact that the beer now tastes like hop-flavored sparkling water, industrial brewers might adjust the water chemistry, use hop extracts to put some flavor back in, or manipulate the bitterness profile. But the end result is often a beer that tastes chemical, astringent, drying out your mouth in an unpleasant way, and completely empty in the middle of the palate. Some drinkers describe it as tasting like water with a faint hint of alcohol and bitterness, with nothing else going on. The marketing suggests a healthier lifestyle choice, fewer carbs, fewer calories, and a cleaner drinking experience. The reality is a highly processed industrial beverage where enzymes have done the work that traditional brewing usually leaves to time, temperature, and natural fermentation. You are not drinking a better beer. You are drinking a beer that has been chemically stripped down to almost nothing. And if you think, I will just stick to the classics like Great Northern, that is marketed as a real Australian beer for real Australian conditions, number 4 shows how the beer from up there is actually the beer with much less in it than you might think. Number 4. Great Northern Brewing Company, including Super Crisp and Original. Great Northern is the biggest success story in Australian beer over the past decade. It is marketed relentlessly on images of camping, fishing, and the Queensland heat. The beer from up here, crisp, clean, and perfect for long, hot days outdoors. But let us look at what is actually in the bottle or the can, and who actually owns and brews this beer. Great Northern is not made by a small, independent Queensland brewery with a passion for craft. It is owned by Asahi Beverages, brewed by Carlton and United breweries in large industrial facilities, and it is widely understood within the brewing industry to be heavily adjunct brewed. This means that instead of using 100% malted barley as the fermentable base, the recipe likely relies on significant amounts of cane sugar, glucose syrup, or other cheap fermentable ingredients added during the brewing process. You can see evidence of this in the ingredient list for some Great Northern products. For example, Great Northern Zero, the non-alcoholic version, lists its ingredients as carbonated water, malted barley, wheat, glucose syrup, sugar, roasted barley, sugar again, hops, hop extract, barley malt extract, and flavors. The sugar and glucose syrup are listed multiple times, making it clear that adjuncts play a major role in the formulation. Why do brewers use adjuncts like cane sugar and glucose syrup? For 2 main reasons. First, sugar is significantly cheaper than malted barley. Second, sugar lightens the body and flavor profile of the beer to make it almost non-existent, which the marketing team can then spin as crisp, easy drinking, or refreshing. It is, effectively, a diluted beer designed for people who do not really like the taste of traditional beer, or who want something so light and inoffensive that it barely registers on the palate. You are paying full price for a product that uses cheaper ingredients to deliberately give you less flavor, less body, and less character. It is the fast fashion equivalent of the beer world. Hugely popular, backed by massive marketing budgets, but structurally cheap and designed for volume sales rather than quality or brewing tradition. And if you think, I will avoid all the cheap mass market stuff and just grab a Corona with a wedge of lime, that is a classic. Number 5 explains why that iconic clear bottle is actually ruining the liquid inside from the moment it leaves the factory. Number 5. Corona and other beers packaged in clear glass bottles. Corona is famous around the world for one very distinctive thing: the clear glass bottle with a wedge of lime pushed into the neck. It is a visual icon of beach culture, summer holidays, and relaxed drinking. But that clear bottle is also the beer's worst enemy, and science explains exactly why. Hops, which are the flowers used to give beer its bitterness, aroma, and flavor, contain chemical compounds called isohumulones. When these hop compounds are exposed to ultraviolet light, either from direct sunlight or from fluorescent supermarket lighting, they undergo a chemical reaction that creates a compound called 3-methyl but 2-ene-1-thiol, or 3-MBT for short. The chemical structure of 3-MBT is almost identical to the defensive spray of a skunk. This is why the phenomenon is called light-struck beer, or more commonly, skunked beer. This is precisely why traditional beer bottles are made from brown glass. Brown glass blocks the ultraviolet light and protects the hop compounds inside the beer from degrading. Green glass offers some protection, but not as much as brown. Clear glass offers almost no protection at all. Corona uses clear glass bottles specifically to show off the pale golden color of the beer as part of its visual branding and marketing aesthetic. But this means that almost every single bottle of Corona that has sat under bright supermarket lights, in a shop window display, or in the sun for any period of time is light-struck or skunked before you even open it. That is why the lime wedge is not just a fun garnish or a cultural tradition. The lime is there to mask the off flavor of skunky, degraded beer. Without the lime, many people describe Corona as tasting distinctively rubbery, cardboard-like, or just plain off. Some brewers, like Miller Brewing Company, have found a workaround for this problem. They use specially formulated hop extracts that do not react with ultraviolet light to create 3-MBT, which allows them to continue using clear bottles for brands like Miller High Life without the beer becoming skunked. But Corona does not use this technology. They rely on the lime and the consumer's expectation that the beer is supposed to taste that way. You are buying a product that is packaged in a way that actively degrades and damages the liquid inside, purely for the sake of marketing aesthetics and brand recognition. The pattern, the industrial beer trap that hides in plain sight. See the pattern across all 5 of these ghost brands, where supermarkets pretend to be breweries and use contract brewing to undercut independent beer makers. Fake local imports, where Asahi is brewed in the same Australian suburbs as Victoria Bitter, not in Tokyo. Enzyme processing, where low-carb beers are stripped of all malt character and body using industrial amyloglucosidase enzymes. Cheap adjuncts, where cane sugar and glucose syrup replace expensive malted barley in beers like Great Northern to cut costs and lighten flavor. And bad packaging decisions, where clear glass bottles allow ultraviolet light to ruin the beer inside for the sake of brand image. We have drifted a long way from beer being a craft product made by brewers who care about flavor, tradition, and quality ingredients. Instead, much of the modern beer aisle is now a cost-cutting exercise controlled by accountants, marketing departments, and global conglomerates focused on profit margins and shareholder returns. So what do you actually drink if you want real, honest, well-made Australian beer that respects both the brewing tradition and your taste buds? Now let us talk about the Australian options that are genuinely worth your time and your money. Safer option 1, Cooper's Brewery, the family-owned Australian icon. If you want a widely available, affordable beer that is still brewed with integrity and honesty, you genuinely cannot beat Cooper's. Cooper's Brewery is the largest Australian-owned brewery left standing in the country. It is family-run and has been for generations. The brewery was established way back in 1862 by Thomas Cooper in the Adelaide suburb of Norwood, and it is now run by 5th and 6th generation members of the Cooper family, including current chair Glenn Cooper and Chief Executive Officer Dr. Tim Cooper. Cooper's is still based in the Adelaide suburb of Regency Park, and it produces beer and exports it to over 50 countries around the world. Crucially, their most famous beers, Cooper's Pale Ale and Cooper's Sparkling Ale, are bottle-conditioned. This means there is a little layer of live yeast sediment sitting in the bottom of every bottle. They do not pasteurize the life out of the beer to extend shelf life. They do not use chemical preservatives to keep it stable. They use malt, hops, water and yeast, and they let the beer naturally carbonate and mature in the bottle. It is real beer, made the traditional way, using genuine brewing methods that have been refined over more than 160 years. and it is sold at a price point that directly competes with the industrial mass-market beers we just talked about. If you want to support Australian-owned brewing and drink something with actual flavour and character, Cooper's is an easy, accessible, affordable choice that you can find in almost any bottle shop in the country. Safer option too. Independent craft breweries, look for the independent seal. Australia has an incredible independent beer scene, and there is a very simple way to identify which breweries are genuinely independent and which ones have been bought out by the global conglomerates. Look for the independent seal on the can, bottle or tap handle. It is a logo created and managed by the Independent Brewers Association, or IBA for short, and it looks like a circular badge with the word independent clearly displayed. The Independent Brewers Association was established in 2017 to represent the more than 400 independent brewing businesses operating in Australia. The IBA defines an independent brewery as any brewery or brewing company that is less than 20% owned by a large industrial brewer and that produces less than 40 million litres of beer per year. The independent seal was launched shortly after the association was founded, and it was designed to help Australian consumers easily identify and support breweries that are locally owned, community-focused and not controlled by multinational corporations or the big two brewing duopoly of Asahi and Lion. The seal has become especially relevant in recent years as more and more Australians have grown frustrated with the dominance of supermarket chains and the lack of genuine choice in the retail landscape. During the COVID-19 pandemic, we saw a huge resurgence of support from Australians for their local small businesses, and that same energy has carried over into the beer world. Many consumers now actively want to support independent breweries, but it can be genuinely difficult to tell which brands are independent and which ones are owned by massive corporations hiding behind craft branding. The independent seal solves that problem instantly. Brands that carry the independent seal include excellent breweries like Bridge Road Brewers in Victoria, Bent Spoke Brewing Company in Canberra, and many others across every state and territory. These brewers generally use 100% malt grain bills with no cheap sugar fillers. They use quality whole hops or high-quality hop products. They do not rely on industrial enzymes to strip flavor out of their beers, and they are focused on making beer that actually tastes like something, rather than beer that is designed to be as inoffensive and cheap as possible. If you see the independent seal, you know you are supporting a genuinely independent Australian small business that contributes to its local community and makes great beer. Safer option 3, Heaps normal and other high-quality non-alcoholic craft beers. If you are drinking low-carb beers because you are trying to be healthier, cut down on calories, or reduce your alcohol intake, here is a much better idea. Skip the enzyme-stripped industrial low-carb lagers altogether and swap to a high-quality non-alcoholic craft beer like Heaps Normal. Instead of drinking a chemically processed brew that has been stripped down to almost nothing in order to save a few grams of carbohydrates per serve, you remove the alcohol entirely, which is actually the main toxin and the main source of empty calories in beer, but you keep all the flavour, body and character of real beer. Heaps Normal is brewed in Australia, and it tastes like genuine beer because the brewers focus on the actual brewing process, quality ingredients, and proper technique, rather than just stripping things out with enzymes or cutting corners with adjuncts. Non-alcoholic craft beer has come an incredibly long way in recent years, and many of the best examples are now virtually indistinguishable from full-strength beer in terms of flavour and mouthfeel. If your goal is health, moderation, or just wanting to enjoy a beer without the downsides of alcohol, a well-made non-alcoholic beer is a far better choice than an industrial low-carb enzyme beer. How to drink better beer and support better brewing. Australian beer culture is so much better than cheap supermarket ghost brands, watered-down adjunct lagers, and chemically stripped low-carb beers. Do not let the big corporations and the marketing departments trick you into drinking products that are designed for profit margins rather than for flavor and quality. Next time you are at the bottle shop, here is what to do. First, look for the brown bottle or the can. Avoid clear glass bottles because science tells us they allow ultraviolet light to degrade the beer. Second, check the label carefully for phrases like brewed under license or brewed locally, because that often means it is not the genuine imported product you think you are paying for. Third, look for the independent seal from the Independent Brewers Association, or just grab a Cooper's, because both of those options guarantee you are drinking Australian-owned, independently made, quality beer. Your taste buds will thank you. Your wallet will thank you in the long run because you are getting better value for money. And the Australian brewing industry will thank you because you are supporting the brewers who actually care about making great beer. If this video made you thirsty for the real stuff and made you want to rethink what is sitting in your fridge right now, hit like so more Australians can see it. If you want more deep dives that protect your choices, your health, and your money from corporate shortcuts and marketing tricks, make sure you subscribe and turn on notifications, because we are not done with the supermarket shelves yet. And tell me in the comments, which premium beer were you most shocked to find out is actually brewed right here in an industrial facility, not imported from overseas? Share your thoughts below so other Australians know exactly which bottles and cans to think twice about before they buy. Cheers, and always drink responsibly.